So, Steve, first of all, let's just talk about the new year, new gun laws that are taking effect specifically in the state of California. I know that there's one that has to do with when you purchase a gun, correct?
So there is, that one doesn't actually take effect now for, I think it's until, we have actually a couple years on that one.
Oh, okay.
The biggest one, and coming off of 2024, I'll be completely honest, this is kind of a benign year.
Okay.
So there's not a whole lot that's going on. There still are a couple kind of major points, and one of them has to do with storage of firearms.
Okay.
So storage of firearms in your house now, and there's the original law that was placed through, and kind of what we were kind of stuck with is kind of a watered down version of what they were actually pushing through, was that what's going into effect is storage of firearms in the home, so that you're required to store your firearm in a, it doesn't have to be a California approved. They were going for California approved storage, but a safe is okay. And there's an exemption now for if you're in control of the firearm. So basically, if you're not in control of the firearm, your gun has to be stored, in a safe or other approved
Okay.
lockbox.
That would, yes, I was just going to ask you. That would include some sort of lockbox. So if you're in the living room, the lockbox could be in the kitchen. That sort of scenario?
No, so it has to be, that gun has to be in your immediate control. So, and the way that it's worded is that if somebody else has access to it, like, an unauthorized person, like a child, or you have to be in that control, and that person can be in between you, kind of thing.
Okay.
So.
And obviously these are the kind of laws that really can only be enforced sort of in hindsight or after the fact if something happens.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think for a minute that that law enforcement is going to be coming into your house and checking to make sure. But if something does happen, they're going to say, hey, what led to this? What were the circumstances? Where kind of what was the layout in the house? And and then kind of go retroactively and enforce the law.
Okay. And in terms of, we didn't really see anything new in the books in terms of selling, buying ammo, or
not in the commercial field.
Okay.
There was a law that went into effect yesterday that had to do with the sales of firearms and ammunition from law enforcement.
Okay.
It's, AB 733, and what that has to do is that law enforcement used to be able to sell guns and ammo and basically pay for, it goes back into their budget, whether it went back into the general fund or it went to purchasing other equipment. They're not able to do that anymore. They can't sell guns or ammo.
Okay, so like if a police department, they used to maybe they had a certain Glock that was the standard issue, and then they're swapping it out. They used to be able to sell the ones that they're not using anymore.
Sure. Now they can. I believe that there's an exemption. Please don't hold me to this one, but I believe there's an exemption for duty weapons to officers.
Okay.
But as far as like an evidence gun, say an evidence gun comes in and the case has been adjudicated, and they're going to, sell this gun or whatever for, funds for the police department, they can't do that anymore.
Okay. What happens with that stuff now?
Well, it has to be destroyed.
Oh.
So it either has to be destroyed or they have to keep it indefinitely, depending on the case, or what their requirements are.
Okay. I thought I had read something about some new law about like every 30 days, like you could only buy a gun every 30 days, and now
So that one got thrown out. So that was a law that was absolutely, that was a law that was going to go in effect. That one was already in effect, and they were adding to it for private party transfers this year. That got thrown out. So the 1 in 30 days, that's done. You can buy as many guns as you want to now.
Right.
that's back to how it used to be.
Okay.
But that did not go in effect.
Is there a limit on how many guns a person can buy or own?
There's reporting and all of that stuff, but no, there's not. So I mean, if you want to buy 5 handguns in a day, you can do that now.
Right. I mean, it all goes through the DOJ. They're keeping an eye on the
absolutely,
number,
and there are reporting. There are already key aspects in place when certain guns are purchased, and there's so many of them purchased. We have to report. So it's nothing that it's like we're not telling on anybody. It's something that we're required to do. it's called a multiple cell report that we have to report to the ATF.
Okay. I don't know if you can speak on this, but as a retailer and also as somebody with a background in law enforcement,
Sure.
I'm sure that you've seen California has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation.
Correct.
Have you seen, as different laws get passed and approved, have you seen direct impacts on public safety or drops in gun violence?
So the only thing that I've witnessed personally, and I have a background in law enforcement, and I have a background now in retail sales. When people are told that they can't have a certain thing, that's when they go out and they buy it.
Right.
I back in 2016 when the bullet button law went into effect with AR-15s. It was everybody was rushing out to buy AR-15s.
Right.
Now, what I have seen in my background in law enforcement is when we either fail to enforce or we decriminalize things that are or crimes that are already on the books. That's when we've seen the increase in property thefts and violent violent crimes against people.
Yeah.
That's when I have seen that, and even at my level, locally, you could definitely see that, and I know you see it across the state level and even nationally.
Yeah, we're already getting reports from a lot of DAs about the impacts of Prop 36.
Sure.
Just, hey, this person, they would have just been booked and released, and now they're looking at doing a few years. So.
Right. And over my time, I've watched that. I mean, I've watched decriminalization of property crimes and part one felonies and crimes against people be decriminalized, and people it's kind of creating the perfect storm. When you decriminalize or reclassify what crime is, and you put more criminals back out on the street, it's creating that perfect storm, and that's when you see more property crimes and crimes against person just skyrocket.
Okay.
What I would like to see is DOJ and ATF enforce the laws that are already on the books now, rather than create new laws for law-abiding citizens.
Right. Well, okay. Back to the new laws.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In terms of people who are actually concealed carry weapon permit holders, right, in California, we recently saw something has it taken effect yet? The rule that would say that you couldn't carry at like libraries or.
Okay, so that has gone. So that was 2024.
Okay.
And that was just an onslaught of different laws that they threw a bunch of stuff out there, and a lot of it did stick, but a lot of it got knocked down, and there's stays and injunctions and all of that, and we're still weeding through what's going to happen with all of that.
Right.
So we're currently, and we put on a 2-hour course just on the SB2 updates from last year.
Yeah.
So to be able to break down every single aspect right there, and there's a lot of nuances in the law that, well, if you're doing this and if you have a restraining order against this person, then it doesn't apply.
Right.
And I mean, there's so many caveats
I mean,
there.
you can enter the business as long as you walk backwards and then skip
Sure,
twice,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, but for the most part, most of SB2 is in effect, even if parts are being contested.
Correct.
At this point.
Correct. And there's several, and there's fallout from these different laws that go in effect that we're just now seeing that maybe they went in effect in 2024, but now they're finally catching up, and people are coming to class, our CCW classes. I think last year we did something like 3,500 students or something like that, but they're coming to class and they're having no idea that, say for an example, they can't use their spouse's gun anymore on their CCW.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and you want to talk about, just the different effects. That's a huge blow to people. And on top of that, it's boosting firearm sales.
Yeah.
So I know overall the general rule for these laws are they're trying to cut down on firearms that are on the street,
right?
Or even in law-abiding citizens' hands. But what it's doing, it's having the opposite effect. Because if, say, you and your husband came in, and for all these years you've been able to you've been able to have the same gun on a CCW. Now you can't anymore. One of them's buying a new gun.
Right.
You know, so it is creating sales, which is kind of the opposite effect I think that the legislature had in mind.
Right.
They were trying to make it more difficult, but they're actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then one thing that, in terms of SB2, for businesses, right, the rule that you can't carry into a private business, that's still in effect unless the business posts a sign, right?
Okay, so that was one of the ones that was covered under the stay or under the injunction.
Okay.
So basically, it would have been where you wouldn't have been able to go into any business unless that business posted a sign saying it was okay.
Yeah.
It's not like that right now in California.
Got it. Okay.
So what absolutely did take effect in 2024 that people are just, you know, and again, people are just realizing, and we get it every day, is the 11% sales tax. So 11% sales tax, it's not a new one for 2025, but it did go in effect, you know, in July of 24. If you come in for firearms, ammunition, or precursor parts, so gun parts to build firearms, there's an additional 11% sales tax that's going to the state of California.
Yeah, and that's on top of what your county and the existing income.
And I don't know
tax.
if a lot, exactly, and I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but say like for the city of Chico, an example, the city of Chico has an additional 1% sales tax that goes just to the city. We just had another sales tax that was voted in that takes effect this upcoming year, I think in April, that the county now has an additional 1% sales tax. So in the city of Chico, you have 1% going to the city, 1% going to the county, and then you have the standard sales tax. Then you have this additional 11% sales tax, and what everybody forgets is you still have a federal excise tax on guns and ammunition. So you're north of 30% in tax when you're buying guns or ammo.
Yeah.
So that's significant, and I think a lot of people don't actually realize that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've covered pretty much everything people need to keep in mind in terms of purchasing. For people who are continually getting a CCW permit renewed, they get the continued education, right? Every couple of years.
Absolutely, and what we push is stay informed.
Yeah.
You know, that's really what, you know, we believe in, you know, safety through training and education. A part of that is staying informed of, you know, different carry laws, different gun laws. A way to be able to do that is, and you don't have to be a member, and I am a member of CRPA, so the California Rifle and Pistol Association. You don't have to be a member, but they put out free publications. You know, it's just to get information out there, to keep people informed. We have, us personally, we don't charge for it, but it's on our text line. So if you join our text line, we keep you updated on if there's any major changes, you know, or anything like going on that you need to know about CCW-wise or gun law-wise.
And so if somebody's just a gun owner, right, and they want to stay informed too, they can sign up for the text line as well? Or?
Absolutely. So, it costs you nothing. You know, you'll get a text message from us every now and then, but CRPA also, they're the ones that are, you know, taking on basically the fight and, you know, keeping up, you know, going for our rights in Sacramento, you know, against the, basically for the legislature, you know.
Okay,
so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of Sacramento,
sure.
We're just getting started into a new year, but I know that a lot of times like pending legislation kind of pushes forward stuff that didn't get pushed through in 2024. Is there anything up and coming that you're kind of keeping your eye on?
So there's always a lot, and basically over the last couple years, I've been actually pretty excited about what's going on at a national level, and some of these laws that we believe, you know, infringe on our Second Amendment rights. They've actually been getting struck down. So what I tell people is just trust in the system. This is it, you know, for the short term, yes, it's not good for, you know, gun owners in general. But sometimes for the system to play out, sometimes what you have to do is you have to let it go through the system, be challenged, and, you know, take it to the Supreme Court, and then they will make a ruling on it. And recently they've been ruling, you know, in favor of Second Amendment and, you know, gun owners.
It's interesting because, I mean, there's a lot to be said about states' rights and each individual state having its own set of rules based on what the people there vote for. But a lot of times once there is just some clarity from the Supreme Court, it does make it easier. Especially when we buy and sell across state lines. So that can get really confusing, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else that I didn't ask about?
No,
We covered a lot.
really, like I said, in the grand scheme of things, again, if you weigh it against 2024, it's a pretty benign year.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that are coming out that that you do need to keep your eye on. The biggest thing, and they are fighting, like the 11% sales tax. They've got lawsuits and all of that stuff. A lot of what we're going to be seeing probably in the next year to 2 years is going to be case law. And you really have to be caught up on that as well and stay informed, because they could have a law in the books, just like the law that we talked about that was supposed to go in on private party transfers this year that got knocked down last year, and that's a case law update that you have to keep informed on. And even though it's it's legislative in the law, the case law overrules it.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot that you are expected to know as a
Oh,
citizen.
sure.
There's so many different laws out there, and it's just I guess it's our responsibility to just stay on top of it.
And that's the thing, is if you are a gun owner, they're not going to send a letter to your house saying, "Hey, this is the new gun laws for for 2025." It's your responsibility to stay informed, to keep on top of what's coming down the pike.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.